Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Prepping for Everything podcast with me, Emily. I'm just laughing right now as I sit here to record this because I've gotten used to recording these podcasts every week. But my niece is over, she's staying at the moment, and she said to me, "Where are you actually going to record your podcast?" Because she assumed I was going to the office. But instead I'm sitting in my wardrobe. Her eyes almost popped out of her head when I told her that. She's like, "You're the online version of Harry Potter." And yeah, I guess it probably is a little bit weird, but it's the best way to get like crisp, clear sound so that it's not echoing in a big loud room. Maybe one day I'll have this podcast studio that's really soundproofed, but until then, we're in the wardrobe. We make do with what we have here is exactly what I tell you all with preparedness or any sort of self-sufficiency skills that you want to learn. Make do with what you have. You do not need 10 acres. It's okay. You can be in an apartment and learn all of this. And today I just really wanted to dive into preparedness and homesteading as a whole. I took questions on Instagram earlier this week and I had so many questions which were asking like what got me into preparedness, what started us off on this pathway, what is the reason or motivation behind it. And I don't actually know if I've addressed this before. If I have, I'm sorry for constantly repeating myself, but here we go. Let's get into it. So when I talk about preparedness or homesteading, a lot of it to me just comes down to the way that we were raised. We are, again, in the Highlands of Scotland. We live quite a country lifestyle. I think back to my childhood and we were just always outside, and growing up, it wasn't really called prepping. It was just normal life for us. Like we were raised growing food and hunting and fishing, and our dad teaching us how to create snares because realistically, that was his childhood too. So he passed it on to us, which I am so grateful for. As I sit here, I think about how we really aren't that far away from, World War I, World War II, and all of these skills that people needed to survive this, to survive the Great Depression. People needed to be self-sufficient. People needed to be resilient. And back then, it was just being a responsible human being when you were stocking your pantries, when you were growing your own food, when you were going to the local farmer to get your dairy. It's just what you had to do to provide for your family. It wasn't this crazy big thing. But then convenience food came in and supermarkets and grocery stores arrived, and it's a great thing. It's really convenient, but is it that convenient when we've lost all of our skills that we really need to survive? Because I'm not so sure. And I'm not sitting here on our high horse. We don't have it all figured out. We're not growing enough food to make it last for the year, but that is the goal. That is what I want to get to. I want to get to a point that we are mainly growing, hunting, foraging and eating our own food. And that still seems quite far away to me. And I know that we can't do it all on our own. I don't want to be self-sufficient completely. That isn't the goal because I understand you need community. You need other people. You cannot do everything all on your own. And if you did, you would be completely exhausted. And where's the enjoyment left for life? When I come to all of this, I don't come to it from a place of fear. I constantly have people asking me like, are you not terrified? Is this what brought you to it? And maybe initially I started to get like more into prepping because 2020 did freak me out. The government overreach, the way that people turned on one another, it was just real insanity for me to sit back and watch. And I know that a lot of you think the same way. I know a lot of you think it was necessary to be locked in our homes against our will for a virus that had such a low death rate. Whatever you're viewing it, I don't care. But it freaked me out personally. And we just became so shook and so acutely aware of what was going on that it's hard to not see life through those eyes anymore. And it made me think I never want to be in the position that I am completely dependent on the supermarket and the supply chains that are there, because we saw what people were like over toilet roll. I say this time and time again, if people fought over toilet roll, can you even imagine what people would do if food was scarce? I hate the thought of it. I don't like the way that human beings acted during this time. I don't like the division that was created. I always said that I could not understand how people turned on Jewish people way back when. And I saw the exact same tactics used to describe the unvaccinated. They were being called diseased, they were being called dirty. Whole families and friends were turning against these people. It was just crazy. It was mass psychosis. People that I've been friends with from childhood turned against me. And I don't care what your views were. I couldn't care less what other people do. I didn't like the thought of people being forced into an experimental vaccine. Anyway, we don't need to get political on this podcast, but that's what really made me ramp it up, and that's what really I was quite fearful about. I really thought that we were going to get up to a point that we would be hiding under floorboards. Yeah, that's how I felt. That's how I was made to feel when you couldn't go anywhere without having to have half your face covered just for you to sit down and then remove it in a crowded restaurant. That's how I felt when we couldn't travel, when we were being turned against, when we had to have digital IDs, when everybody's opening conversation was speaking about your medical status. It's just weird. Can we collectively agree that that was a weird time? Can we at least agree on that? But that's what made it ramp up. It's not what made it start, because like I said, I think it was just pretty normal for us. We were kind of raised like this. And even when I think back to my dad, like, he grew up in a traditional small fishing village and everyone was poor. He had to live like this. They had to live like this. The rabbit that he would catch that day was then eaten at dinner in a stew that night. They preserved fish with salt, anything that they could. They grew their own food. They got milk from the local farmer. All of this was just normal life. And it's just what had to be done. And I feel like I'm kind of ranting tonight, but that's another thing that keeps coming up on social media. People saying, oh, you must be so privileged. You must be rich. You must be fill in the blank to live like this. And it's like, really? Is that how you see it? Because I see it as really hard work. I see it as growing and hunting your own food is almost free. It just takes a lot of time and effort. I see chopping wood and putting wood in your fire as a cheaper alternative to electricity bills. I guess it's just how you view things. We certainly are not rich. We are doing what we can with what we have. And yeah, we're in the midst of renovating our home just now, pretty much by ourselves. And it's going to take one heck of a long time. But it's simply because we can't afford to do it all quickly through tradesmen. It's the way that it's got to be done. And we make these sacrifices because we want to live rurally, even more rurally in the country. We had to sacrifice on having a nice house because really our house is so run down because it's all we could afford. We wanted the land. We ended up with more land and a worse house. And I guess it's all just about priorities. It's about what you prioritize. We don't care about living in a city. So now that we live really far away from a city, the property price was less than the likes of a new build. And we live as frugally as we can. We don't drive new cars. We don't go out to eat very often for birthdays and Christmases. We don't really do extravagant gifts or go away. And that might sound really sad and boring, but we have a vision for what we want and we're working towards it hard. I don't want to put ourselves in debt to look like we're doing well to other people or to have satisfaction for half a day and then be miserable again. We're putting in the work. We're trying really hard to create this life that we want. We want, obviously, to get our house livable. That is the main thing for us right now. It is like a construction site. There is rubble everywhere. We are knocking through walls. We are in the demolition stages, and then from there we're going to build it back up. But once the house is livable, at least to a standard that we can move in with a baby and it's not a health hazard, we will move in and we'll just tick along doing bits as we can. From there, we really want to get more animals. We want chickens and ducks and pigs and geese and maybe a couple of cows, and we'll bring our bees up. And I see it as this perfect place that we want to raise our children. I kind of look at the way that the world's going and I think it's so sad the way that kids are brought up these days, attached to a screen, attached to TikTok, with no real reality of the outside world. They don't know what it's like. They have low self-esteem issues. Mental illness is rampant. Maybe I'm being naive, maybe I'm being idealistic, but it's what I see. I feel like I had such a great childhood, and that is really what I want to give to my children. It's one of my biggest aims in life is to give my children a childhood like it was in the 90s, when we all just enjoyed life. It was carefree. You played outside every night after school and you would only know when to go home because the street lights would click on. Does that not just make you kind of warm and fuzzy when you think about it? And I know I said home after school there. I get asked again all the time, are we planning on homeschooling our kids? I was planning on homeschooling. I'm still unsure about it. I just feel like the curriculum that's been pushed in schools is really detrimental to kids and it's confusing kids, and I don't like the way that this is going. But that being said, where we are moving to is a super tiny school and it's just down the road from us. I think it's got 8 kids in the whole school and that's across 7 years. It's primary school. They seem really nature-based, really outdoorsy. So we're just going to play it by ear. We're not saying yes or no just now. We're just going to see what aligns best with us when Rosemary and any future kids hopefully come along. Gee whiz, that was a really big tangent from how I started this podcast. I think I was initially addressing what was the reason or motivation for prepping, and then I ended up speaking about 10 other things. But I think you probably get the gist from that. And one of the main reasons and motivation for me is that I want to be able to provide for my family no matter what is going on externally. No matter what is going on in the world, no matter how fearful or heavy it gets, no matter what the news headlines are saying, or food shortages, or natural disasters, or inflation, or Will being out of work, or one of us being ill and losing our income, no matter what it is, I want life to be able to kind of continue going on as normal for us and our family. I never ever want my kids to not feel like they know where their next meal is coming from. That is my biggest motivation. That's what makes me want to learn more about growing food, about hunting, about butchering animals, about food preservation and fishing and making creels, and about everything else that comes under this bracket. I want to know how to do as much as possible, and I want to surround myself with these kind of people, these kind of ones that also see the vision and are aligned and don't just instantly point the finger and say that you're a crazy tinfoil hat person because they're so dependent on the system and they can't see on any other viewpoint. That's the goal. That's the aim. I don't want to live in this big commune. I really quite like being on my own and I like spending time with my family, but I love having friends who see this vision. I love creating community. I think of that and I instantly think of my friends Rory and Hannah down the road. They live just down from us and they're amazing. Like they're pretty similar to us. They're really easy to be around, and I think it's important to just find people who get it. Find people that you don't need to constantly feel like you're explaining yourself to, because that gets tiring. You don't want to have to just be explaining your way of living 24/7 and having people judging you. And I think growing up in a small place, this is really prevalent here. You do anything out with the norm and you're being spoken about in WhatsApp group chats. People are just constantly taking the mick out of you, and it's a really weird way to be. I think when you're so focused on your life and your vision, you don't really care about what other people are doing. So it can almost be difficult to understand where these kind of people are coming from. But I think it says more about Susan than it does Sally when Susan is constantly gossiping about Sally. Does that make sense? Is that the expression? Who knows? I think I just butchered that. But I'm here to say, just do you, regardless of what anyone else is saying, regardless of who's pointing fingers and talking about you and who's laughing. It's funny, like when local people started finding my page, there's this concern about security. I'm a very private person. I don't even have a personal social media anymore, and I don't like people knowing anything about us. So it's a really, really weird thing now to have this platform and people from around here following me, and I don't mind. Like when people are genuinely interested in what I'm talking about, more power to us, because I want more people to learn these skills and just have a bit more of an open mind to everything that I'm talking about. But I spoke about this on social media before, and a lot of people message saying that you started pages and then people from around you found it and you were so embarrassed and you deleted it. And it's just such an awful way to be, that we need to feel like that. And you don't need to. Ignore those people. These people don't matter in your life. If you have a passion and you want to start a social media around it, then please take this as your sign to go and do it. You don't need anyone else's permission. This is your life and you only have one of them. Whew. Motivational speech over. I think we're probably about 20 minutes in now, and I've been talking about so many different things. So we're going to talk about even more things now, and I'm going to take listener questions from Instagram. I'm going to try and get through as many of them as we can within the time slot that we have. So here we go. Hi listeners, are you ready to take your preparedness to the next level? My comprehensive online course is a great place to start. From food storage and preservation to water readiness and bag out bag checklists, I've got you covered. This is more than just presentation screens. I've also added downloadable worksheets, video tutorials, checklists, and loads of prepping content which is consistently being added to as we generate new ideas. Not to mention, you get to take this in your own time to fit around your lifestyle, and you get lifetime access to the content. And here's the best part. As a valued listener of this show, you get an exclusive 10% discount with code POD10. That's POD10 to enter into the coupon code section at checkout. Don't miss out on this opportunity to level up your preparedness game. Visit the link in the show notes to enroll today, and together we can build a future where we are prepared for whatever life throws our way. I'll see you there. Okay. After that quick ad break, let's get into the questions. Amanda asks, do you have a bunker? If not, would you build one? Oh my gosh, I would love a bunker. Do you know if everybody who listened to this podcast gave me £1, I could build the bunker of our dreams and you could all be invited if shit hits the fan. But seriously, I would really like a bunker. Maybe just for a little bit of peace, you know, if it gets a little bit too noisy and there's a lot going on, you could just take yourself off and read a good book and not be disturbed because nobody knows that you're down there underground. But also, I really want a root cellar. Like, all joking aside, I really want a root cellar. I want a way that is kind of temperature controlled and just a way to keep my fruits and vegetables as fresh as they possibly can be without the need for modern technology like fridges, you know. That is on the wish list. Once we get everything else done at our new house, we are considering putting a root cellar into the side of the hill in the field. So maybe if you check back in 5 years, hopefully 2 years or 3 years, but potentially 5 years, we might be there. Emily and Tobias asks, is it hard to build community being so remote? Something I worry about with relocating. So I will let you know when we move if it's hard to build community. I find from living in a small place, it's easier to build community than being in the likes of a city because everybody is typically more close-knit, especially in the village that we are just moving away from now. People are really helpful. People are really friendly generally, and you can meet a lot of people through groups and classes and anything that you're interested in. If you're interested in knitting, go to a knitting class. If you're interested in drinking and partying, go to a pub. You'll meet people there. If you're interested in gardening, find a local allotment or a local community garden and you'll make friends. I never feel like that's been much of a concern to me, and I think that if you move anywhere new, you can always meet people. Laura Library asks, if you were starting to grow food in a flat, what do you recommend to start with? What do you enjoy eating? I always say that herbs are easiest to start with, especially to incorporate into your dinner every night. You can just grow them on your windowsill and they're so easy to take a cutting off and then you have a whole new plant eventually. Those are good things to start with. Another thing that instantly came to my head is potatoes. Because I eat potatoes almost every night. They are so easy to grow. Literally just wait until they sprout, which is when your potato grows those little roots that kind of looks like eyes coming out of them. Wait until that happens. Cut a chunk of that off and let it dry out a little bit and scab over, which will help prevent rot after you plant the potatoes, and then just stick it into the ground. Like, get a big bag or a bucket or whatever, fill it with soil, and then put it into the soil with the little eyes facing up the way. So the cut part will be down the way and the bit with the longest sprout will be up the way. And then give it a bit of time and you will have a bunch of new potatoes. It really is as easy as that. But just research whatever you eat consistently. If you eat tomatoes consistently and you have a really sunny spot in your house, you can grow tomatoes there. You can also look into grow lights in your house. If you want to get really serious about growing in an apartment, this might be the way to go, but you'll figure it out. I think for each individual thing that you think about wanting to grow, just research, and it really is trial and error as well. I mean, I research as much as I want, but every single year I'm gardening or growing things, I'm learning something new and I'm learning a better way of doing it. Annie asks, how's postpartum lovely? Are you taking care of you? Oh, what a lovely question. Thank you. And I think I am. I'm certainly trying anyway. I really struggled at the beginning of motherhood because, time for you really does go out the window. You've got this whole new little person depending on you, and they're the priority. You come second now because this little life that you're trying to keep alive takes over everything. But I really found now that we're 9 weeks in, I'm getting into the flow of things, and I find it a lot easier now when I'm doing all the things that I used to do, but I'm doing it with her. I'm still sowing my seeds, but I'm doing it baby wearing. I'm still doing yoga in the mornings, but now I'm doing it with her lying on the floor beside me. It's really, really lovely now that I'm just starting to get into this rhythm with her, and she is just slotting in so perfectly. Like, your life doesn't need to stop just because you have a baby. You can keep doing life, it's just going to look different, and you can keep finding ways to make adjustments and make things work for you. It took me 9 weeks to get there, but we're getting there. Thank you for asking. Homestead Wannabe asks, what are your prepper red flags, i.e. what signals make you prep more intensely, like war, inflation, etc.? Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start and stop with this question, because how far down the rabbit hole are we going today, guys? I feel like my prepper red flags are just always there now. You see it through the propaganda. You see it through the World Economic Forum. You see it through what they're trying to indoctrinate kids with these days and the younger generation. You see it through the socialism that's been pushed so heavily, the climate agenda, Agenda 21. Where do you want me to start and stop here? Will I just keep throwing out keywords and hope that you go and Google it? Or yeah, I'm sorry. This needs to be a whole new podcast because we can't get into all of this today. Hugo asks, would you live in a family compound? I would love to live in a family compound. Only before we found this property that we've been looking for years, I was really trying to convince my parents and my brother and his girlfriend to buy pretty much an estate with us, which is like a big piece of land, and we could all have our own house within that. I don't want to live on top of one another. I don't want to just be breathing down one another's necks, but I love being close to my family. I love my family. It's who I connect with the most, and we're all really tight. We're really close-knit, and we see things pretty similarly, which helps as well. I would feel more safe. I would feel more secure. I think it's a beautiful way to raise your children when they're being raised generationally. I think it's the way that we did this back in the day. Our parents were not pumped off to care homes. They were looked after within the family unit, and that's just how I see life going for us. And of course, I'm not going to be living with my mum and dad right now. We're moving even further away from them, which is really sad. We're going to be about an hour away from them now. It's not terrible. We're not halfway across the world, but I think when they do get older and when they start needing more help, we'll need to reassess, because I don't want to be that far away from them when they need us. And I think now that we've brought a baby into, I just hope that they come up and stay a little bit more often, and that we all stay as close as what we are now. S. Owen asks, what was your experience in school? Did you do public school in Scotland? Yes, I did public school in Scotland. I hated school. I was also really anxious and depressed when I was in high school. I just really hated life, which is crazy to look back on now. And I always thought it would never get any better, but I think it does. I'm here to tell you that it does get better. You become more resilient. You have tools in your toolbox that you don't let yourself go to a dark place. And yeah, when I think about school, I just think about being absolutely miserable. I'm also a massive introvert, and being in a public classroom that's set out for extroverts can be really difficult. I enjoy my own company. I enjoy my own peace. I enjoy not having to be the centre of attention or a class clown. Yeah, that was my experience. I think for the last couple of years of school, my attendance was almost 50%, and I still passed all of my exams because I, again, enjoyed studying and I enjoyed doing it at home. I just hated being in school, which sitting here 10 years later is quite weird to reflect on now, because everything that I was concerned about in school and body image and just feeling so insecure and anxious all the time, I am the complete opposite of that now. I really am like a different person, but at the time you don't think that anything is ever going to change and you don't see a way out. And I don't like to try and turn everything into a lesson or a motivational talk, but seriously, if you're sitting here and you're struggling, then reach out and get help, because I never, and I think that's probably what made my struggles go on for so long. And I also want to say that if you are struggling and if you're in a dark place, that it is going to get better. It does get better. It doesn't feel like it when you're going through it, but you'll come out the other end. I don't want to speak for everybody, because I know some people go through things that they would never, ever wish on their worst enemy. But I'm kind of happy that I went through that time, because it's made me who I am today, without sounding too cliche, and I'm stronger for it. I'm more resilient from it, and I know what I need to do to stay a happy person now, for the most part. Thanks for your question. That was a weird trip down memory lane. Next up, we have Michelle, who asks, what accounts do you like that influence best homemade medicines, etc.? Ooh, I find this hard, because the majority of the accounts that I follow are like home study, homemade, nutrition pages, and I'm struggling to pinpoint one now because there's too many options. One of my favorites is Homestead on Purpose. If you don't follow Steph, you really should, because she shares some amazing things. She's actually got a book called The Holistic Pantry, and within that she just addresses how you can help treat and heal and prevent everyday illnesses and ailments naturally, and I appreciate that. In today's world, I think we all need that. I think we need to stop jumping to modern medicine to heal things that we can heal naturally. Don't get me wrong, modern medicine has its place, but I personally don't think it needs to be the first thing that we run to. FGB asks, how soon do you think bans will begin on log burners? Oh my goodness. Bans have already begun on log burners. This is what frustrates me. This is the way that we are going under the guise of climate change. Let's just have a look. So I know that the UK, or England at least, has just implemented a new rule on this. What are the new rules on log burners, and when are they going to be banned? Wood stoves targeted by latest government environmental regulations. And this is what it all comes under. Saving the environment while restricting all of your freedoms and making sure that you can't heat your home without relying on the government. Anyway, an estimated 1.5 British homes have traditional log burning stoves in their living rooms, with some households finding them a useful alternative to having heating on this winter, especially when bills are so high. Yes, bills are so high. Have you seen our energy prices? They have almost tripled within the past year, and it's only going to get worse. Inflation is going to get worse and worse and worse, and at what point are you not going to be able to heat your home without it being illegal? If you own land with trees, firewood is free. But even then, firewood is a cheaper alternative to electricity right now. Okay, even after the Ofgem's energy price cap at $2,500 in September, average domestic energy bills are double of what they were last year. Yes, they are, placing a huge strain on budgets at a time of double-digit inflation and wage stagnation. Under the government's new Environmental Improvement Plan 2023, burners in designated smoke control areas. Okay, so they're talking about most towns and cities here. You're now only allowed to emit 3 grams of smoke per hour, which is down from 5 grams, as part of a bid to reduce air pollution. And these people that are like pushing these bills through, you know, you hear Bill Gates, you hear Leonardo DiCaprio, you hear all of these rich celebrities that are so out of touch with reality, that are constantly pushing the climate agenda and constantly saying you need to have paper straws instead of plastic straws. You now aren't allowed to heat your home the way that you want to. You're not going to be able to drive your car. You're going to be taxed per mile. This is how bad it's going to get. And the same people that are telling you this, that are trying to restrict all of our freedoms, are the one flying everywhere in private jets. Like, are we taking this? Are we really going to listen to this? The wider agenda here is stupid when you take a step back and look at it. And don't get me wrong, like, I know human beings are polluting the planet. I get it. But the average Joe, Are they really the ones doing all the damage? I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm just a girl sitting in her cupboard speaking to a microphone. But yeah, they're trying to say within this bill that you are going to get fined up to £300 and even face criminal prosecution if you refuse to cut back your chimney smoke. And this is hard, right? Because I'm not saying it's a rule for one and not a rule for the other, because then I'm just as bad as Bill Gates. But I kind of understand it within the likes of a really built up city. If everybody in London had a wood burning stove on, you probably wouldn't be able to see through the air. It's a hard one to create any sort of bill on. But when you are so rurally in the middle of the country, like, I don't know. I don't see the issue. And maybe that's because I live rurally. Okay, guys, you know what I'm trying to say. I need to go now. It's getting late. I hardly slept last night. And I just feel like I'm going to keep on rambling. We'll get back to more next week. Hopefully you're still with me. If you're still with me after this whole podcast, then I salute you. You are the real people that are keeping this going. Okay, thank you for listening. And I'll see you again next week. Let me know what you want to talk about and we'll talk about that. Goodbye.